Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee to order and welcome everyone in attendance. My name is Irfan Sabir, the MLA for Calgary-Buller-McCall and Chair of the committee. As we begin this morning, I would like to invite members, guests, and LAO staff at the table to introduce themselves, and we will begin to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Sear, the MLA for Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
Glenn Van Dyke, the MLA for Athabasca, Bart, and Westlock.
Good morning, Jennifer Johnson, MLA for Lacombe Panoka.
Good morning, Garth Rosal, MLA for Vermilion, Lloydminster, Wainwright.
Good morning, MLA Jackie Lovely from the Camrose constituency.
Steve Lacroix, Managing Director and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. Good morning.
Good morning, Brad Smith, Assistant Deputy Minister of Financial Services.
Good morning, Justin Crickler, Deputy Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services.
Good morning, everyone. Curtis Zablocki, Assistant Deputy Minister of Public Security Division and Director of Law Enforcement.
Good morning, everyone. Ross Nairn, Assistant Deputy Minister of Strategic Services and Integrated Initiatives.
Good morning, Patty Hayes, Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning, Pamela Haluka, Audit Principal, Office of the Auditor General.
Marlon Schmidt, Edmonton Gold Bar.
Uri Renault, St. Albert.
Good morning, Janet Aramenko, MLA for Calgary Curry.
Good morning, Warren Huffman, Committee Clerk.
We'll now go to those joining us online. Please introduce yourself as I call your name. MLA Jason Steffen.
MLA Jason Steffen, Red Deer South. Great to be here. Substituting for Brandon Monty.
Thank you, Jason. I would note for the record the following substitutions. Mrs. Steffen for Mr. Lenty, with Mr. Van Dyken is acting as Deputy Chair. Mr. Roswell for Ms. De Jong, and Mrs. Johnson for Mrs. Sawyer. Purpose statement. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts is mandated to review the public accounts of the Government of Alberta and reports of the Auditor General. The committee examines the administration of government policy, not the merits of it, with the objective of enhancing transparency and accountability in government spending of public funds. The committee operates best when it maintains a nonpartisan approach in carrying out its responsibilities on behalf of all Albertans. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Please note that the microphones are operated by Hansard staff. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and video stream and transcripts of meetings can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. Those participating by video conference are encouraged to please turn on your camera while speaking and mute your microphone when not speaking. Members participating virtually who wish to be placed on a speaker list are asked to email or send a message to the committee clerk, and members in the rooms are asked to please signal to the chair. Please set your cell phone and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting, and comments should flow through the chair at all times. Honorable members, are there any changes or addition to the agenda? If not, would a member move that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts approve the proposed agenda as distributed for its April 21st, 2026 meeting? Mrs. Johnston, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? All in favor joining online? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Approval of minutes. We have minutes from April 14, 2026 meeting of the committee. Do members have any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, would a member like to move that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts approve the minutes as distributed of its meeting held on April 14, 2026? Mr. Van Dyken, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? All in favor joining us online? Any opposed? Motion is nonetheless carried. Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency is here with us today, who will address the ministry's annual report 2024-25, responsibilities under their purview during the reporting period, and relevant reports and outstanding recommendation of the Auditor General. I invite official from the ministry to provide opening remarks not exceeding 10 minutes. Floor is yours, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I am Justin Crickler, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services. With me today to my left is Brad Smith, Assistant Deputy Minister in our Financial Services Division and Senior Financial Officer. To his further left is Steve Lacroix. He's the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister and the Managing Director of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. To my right is Curtis Zablocki, Assistant Deputy Minister in Public Security and the Director of Law Enforcement for Alberta, and to the further right is Ross Nairn, the Assistant Deputy Minister in charge of Strategy, Services and Integrated Initiatives. Behind us we have two more Assistant Deputy Ministers, Ms. Fiona Lavoie. Fiona is in charge of Correctional Services Division, Mr. Joe Zatilny, who is the Deputy Managing Director of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. It is my pleasure to speak to the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services Annual Report for the year ending March 31, 2025. The report outlines a wide variety of accomplishments during the 24-25 fiscal year. The Ministry remained focused on building safer, stronger communities across Alberta, confronting urban and rural crime, strengthening supports for victims, and helping to coordinate the cross-government response to disasters, including wildfires and floods. Across every initiative, our approach centered on collaboration, innovation, and resilience. And our activities were guided by our focus on the three outcomes laid out in the Ministry's 24-27 business plan. Those are, number one, Albertans are safe and secure. Number two, Albertans are supported in their interactions with the justice system. And three, Alberta is prepared and resilient to the impacts of disasters. I'd like to highlight some key initiatives and results related to each outcome. Relative to keeping Albertans safe and secure. First, I'll elaborate on our efforts to ensure the safety and security of Albertans. Through the Safe Streets Action Plan, the Ministry invested more than $18.4 million in 24-25 to help Calgary and Edmonton tackle urban crime. This funding supported 100 additional police officers across both cities, which is strengthening visible enforcement, improving safety, and reducing social disorder in high-risk areas. We also continue to help other communities explore their own policing options. For example, the government provided a total of $16.7 million to help establish the new Grand Prairie Police Service, with $11.3 million of that funding being delivered in 24-25. The new service gives the community greater local control and flexibility to deliver policing that reflects local needs. Through the Indigenous and Municipal Police Transition Study Grant, the Ministry provided a total of $1.27 million in 24-25 to help 18 other communities explore options relative to improving their local policing and community safety models. To directly combat crime in rural areas, 4 new teams of Alberta Sheriffs are helping police by gathering intelligence and evidence and by apprehending wanted fugitives. In 24, the Fugitive Apprehension Team executed 2,156 warrants in 39 municipalities across Alberta. We expanded the Safer Communities and Neighborhood, or SCAN teams, in Edmonton and Calgary, and created 2 new teams in Red Deer and Lethbridge. Since 2008, the Safer Communities and Neighborhoods Unit has investigated more than 10,000 properties, including drug houses and gang hideouts. In 24-25, we also invested $10 million into the Rapid Response Program, which allows provincial peace officers to respond to high-priority crime in rural areas. Reducing response times and increasing police presence across large, sparsely populated areas. We strengthened intelligence-led enforcement strategies, investing $55.7 million into the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Teams, also known as ALERT, which disrupt organized crime by bringing together resources from police agencies across Alberta. Lastly, in December 24, we announced $29 million to create the Alberta Sheriff's Interdiction Patrol Team. This specialized team deals with illegal cross-border activities, particularly along the Alberta-Montana border and major east-west transportation units. Relative to outcome number 2, Albertans are supported in their interactions with the justice system. In addition to strengthening frontline enforcement, we improved supports for Albertans navigating the justice system, from rehabilitation and correctional services to supports and assistance for victims of crime. In 24-25, we launched a new electronic monitoring program to modernize how Alberta monitors high-risk individuals serving community-based sentences. This program uses ankle bracelet technology to track adults identified by courts as posing potential risks and to confirm compliance with their court-ordered conditions. We also established the 4th Therapeutic Living Unit, or TLU, and introduced new transitional services in 5 other correctional facilities, better supporting safe and successful community reintegration following incarceration. These initiatives helped individuals make lasting changes and avoid repeated involvement in the justice system. The ministry also worked to support victims of crime, implementing a new regional model for police-based victim services, and invested $25.7 million to ensure access and consistency for these services across the province. Alongside the new regional model, we invested $8.1 million in the Victims of Crime Assistance Program, which helps victims of serious crime pay expenses, access psychological counsel, and get the care they need. To combat human trafficking, we provided $2.5 million to the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking in Persons, and through the Combating Trafficking in Persons grant, 19 organizations received a total of $5.5 million in funding. The grant was developed collaboratively with the Alberta Centre to focus on prevention, protection, and empowerment of victims and survivors, prioritizing Indigenous and survivor-led initiatives. The ministry also continued to work with partners across the province to better prevent, identify, and respond to hate-motivated incidents. The Hate Crimes Coordination Unit works with law enforcement groups across the province to facilitate training, interagency intelligence gathering, and investigative supports. And through the Alberta Security Infrastructure Program, $2.13 million was provided in funding to 95 groups across Alberta. The funding helped Jewish, Islamic, and Arabic bilingual schools and places of worship, community-based service providers assess and upgrade their facilities, the security of their facilities. On outcome 3, Alberta is prepared and resilient to the impact of disasters. Public Safety and Emergency Services is dedicated to supporting municipalities and communities throughout all stages of emergencies and disasters through the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, or you may hear it referred to today as the AEMA. In summer 2024, wildfires prompted evacuations from several communities, including Jasper, Grand Prairie County, the District of Greenview, the Buffalo region, and Little Red River Cree Nation. To support the emergency response, the ministry allocated $158 million in disaster recovery funding. And leading up to the spring and summer, we provided emergency management training to nearly 19,300 local and municipal staff. In addition, 2 new emergency social services courses were introduced in 24-25 and delivered through 106 sessions, equipping a total of 2,388 participants with the skills to assist evacuees impacted by emergencies. The ministry began implementing the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment Framework in 24-25, establishing a standardized process for risks across the province. This initiative supports government and other stakeholders by ensuring consistent, integrated decision-making to reduce the likelihood and impact of disasters. New training courses and an online tool were developed to support the initiative by enhancing stakeholders' risk assessment and capacity. Together, Mr. Chair, these actions demonstrate how the Alberta Emergency Management Agency strengthened the province's ability to anticipate risks, respond effectively to emergencies, and support disaster recovery. In conclusion, these are a handful of highlights from 24-25 from within the department and the ministry. The report lays out our focus on strengthening public safety in communities, modernizing services and improving supports for victims, and building readiness and resilience in the face of disaster. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleagues and I are now pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to the question, we will get to the Auditor General's office for their comments. Ms. Betty Hayes, Assistant Auditor General, is here, and you have 5 minutes.
Morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of the office's work related to the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Services. So I'll begin with our financial statement audit work for 2024-25. Consistent with prior years, we audited select transactions at the department as part of our audit of the province's consolidated financial statements. We also audited the financial statements of the Victims of Crime and Public Safety Fund and issued a clean audit opinion for the year ended March 31st, 2025. In addition, there are 5 outstanding recommendations directed to the department, and I'll briefly provide some highlights for the committee on those. First, as reported in our 2025 summary of ministry audit work, the department is not currently reporting on activities it performs under the Civil Forfeiture Act. These activities relate to the seizure and sale of property that the minister has determined was involved in criminal activity. Proceeds may be used to fund community-based crime prevention programs and to support victims. By not reporting on these activities, transparency and accountability to Albertans is missing. As a result, we recommended that the department ensure activities under the Civil Forfeiture Act are appropriately recorded and reported in accordance with public sector accounting standards and legislated reporting requirements. This recommendation is not yet ready for our assessment. Also in 2025, we repeated a recommendation that the department improve its financial information preparation and reporting processes. We again found that the department's financial information, as well as the financial statements for the Victims of Crime and Public Safety Fund, were of insufficient quality and contained numerous errors. Without strong reporting processes, the department may not have reliable financial information on which to base its decisions. This recommendation is ready for our assessment, and we are actually currently working on this. 2 years ago, in our 2024 summary of ministry audit work, we reported the results of our audit on the department's Guns and Gangs grant program. And we found the department did not have effective processes to evaluate eligibility or to monitor and report on the program. This is significant because without these processes, funding may be provided to ineligible applicants, grant funds may not be used as intended, and the program may not be achieving its desired outcomes. So we made a recommendation to improve these processes, and that recommendation is also now ready for assessment. So we're working with management to coordinate the timing of this work. The remaining 2 recommendations originate from a 2020 performance audit of the Provincial Hazard Assessment for Emergency Management. We found that the Alberta Emergency Management Agency had prepared a preliminary provincial hazard assessment, but it was incomplete. In addition, roles and responsibilities for the many organizations involved in the assessment process were not clearly defined, and there was no adequate plan to guide the process. We also found that recommendations arising from the department's post-incident disaster reviews had not been implemented. Without an effective hazard assessment system, the Alberta government may lack the information needed to identify priority hazards and make informed decisions, increasing the risk of insufficient mitigation and avoidable costs for Albertans. So based on these findings, we made 2 recommendations: to develop and maintain a provincial hazard assessment and to improve the monitoring and reporting of recommendations from post-incident disaster reviews. Neither of these recommendations are ready for assessment at this time. And with that, I'd like to thank the department's management team for their cooperation and assistance during all of our audits. And that concludes my opening remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will now hear questions from the committee members, and we will begin with the Official Opposition Caucus. You have 15 minutes to start, MLA Armenco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you everybody for being here. I'd like to start with a couple of questions in regards to your opening remarks through the chair around the SCAN investigations. So 10,000 SCAN investigations have been completed since 2008, so the program has been operational for 18 years now, but I suppose 14 for the purposes of our conversation today. In 24-25, there were 951 complaints that led to investigations. How many of those were founded?
May I ask what you're attaching to the definition of the word founded?
Right, so if a complaint is made, and then does every complaint result in an investigation, and therefore every investigation has to be resolved? Or every complaint has to be resolved?
I'll answer that question broadly, and then perhaps I'll ask my ADM, Curtis Zablocki, to provide a refined answer. SCAN works through reporting, right? So a concerned community member will report into the SCAN unit that there's a residence or a real property that's causing a disturbance that may be the site of nefarious activity. So my understanding is that each will be looked at by the SCAN unit. How deep that investigation goes is dependent on what they learn from their attendance at the property. But Curtis, do you have something that can help illuminate the answer to that?
Through the chair, if I could, please, I don't have specific numbers, but to add to the commentary, SCAN works closely with the police of jurisdiction, right? So if it's in Edmonton, the Edmonton Police Service would support the work of the SCAN team. When a SCAN complaint comes in to the SCAN team, residents or locations identified, the work historically looks back upon, how many opportunities police have attended at that location, what interactions, perhaps they've executed search warrants and done other enforcement activity at that location. But
the ministry, tell me, so every complaint results in an investigation?
It results in an assessment and a prioritization.
Does that qualify? I'm trying to understand if 951, the annual report talks about 951 complaints for investigation. What I would like to get at through the chair is when we're talking about the measurement for how long it takes to reach resolution, are all 951 complaints for investigation considered when we are looking at the metric of achieving resolution? Is all 951?
Correct.
They all go through that entire process?
That makes sense.
What does resolution mean for SCAN?
Resolution could appear in a number of different forms. It could be an application for a court order to close the property for a period of 90 days. It could be in the form of a warning letter to the property owner, and then the concern perhaps ceases to exist from that point on.
Where closure is the result, where closure is the resolution, does the ministry have timelines in terms of how long the property can sit vacant? Boarded up but vacant, where closure is required?
There's a 90-day closure order typically from the courts in that context.
Okay, and following 90 days, either the building is condemned or it is fixed up and resold?
Yeah, there are a number of different outcomes in that context, absolutely.
Okay, my concern is that on behalf of constituents and communities, I think across the province, is that oftentimes buildings will sit vacant and then become derelict and then becomes an attractant for further kind of activity. And so 90 days is the strict limit. Within 90 days of that resolution being reached, the building will officially be addressed and removed, condemned, torn down. That is the requirement.
Sorry,
Correct?
is there a question there?
I'm just asking for clarification that it is in fact within 90 days, the buildings will be torn down, condemned, resold, whatever, like it will be addressed. I don't want to have buildings sitting for a year as a result of a SCAN investigation that then becomes an attractant for further social disorder and public safety concerns.
A typical outcome is that the property owner does something with the building, i.e. sells it to your point, remediates it, fixes it up, repairs it, finds new tenants,
Within
so on
90
and so
days.
forth.
Okay.
Beyond 90 days.
Okay,
They don't
Okay.
have that, necessarily that opportunity within that 90-day period because that building is boarded up, it's closed, it's not accessible.
yeah, that's my concern. So I'll move on then. Thank you very much for the information. I'll move on to the therapeutic living units. The therapeutic living units, or TLUs, are kind of embedded throughout the annual report in numerous instances on pages 30 and 33, for example. The ministry discusses therapeutic living units across 4 correctional facilities. Can I get a sense, please, of the percentage of the TLUs that were actually available over the 12-month period of the fiscal year?
The amount of, like, the beds that we list, how many of them were ready to take in clients or
How many
members?
of them were available? So how many of them were actually online?
Okay, we can absolutely provide that answer. Fiona, is that something you can provide?
Good morning. My name is Fiona Lavoie, and I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Correctional Services Division. So there are 4 units within the province that facilitate therapeutic living units. There's 72 beds within those 4 units. And so the measure that we look at is occupancy of those beds during that time.
And then per the calculation that you have, the formula that you have in the annual report, though, it is occupancy of available beds. So we're all 200 beds in correctional services available through 24-25.
So 72 beds are the number of therapeutic living unit beds that are available in the province.
Okay, so 72 beds.
Correct.
And this is the distinction then between beds and spaces. I understand that there are 200, so there are 200 spaces, assuming a 90-day occupancy rate?
200 spaces would not be the calculation. What we would look at is there's always 72 beds, and depending on how many days somebody does remain in the program, which is generally around the 3 months, those beds would be occupied during that time. There's a continual intake and flow, and so as soon as a bed does become available, there is a process that is established in order to facilitate new individuals to participate in the program. So there's an ongoing intake process. It's not a hard start and stop for the program, it's continual intake.
So all 72 beds were available throughout 24-25? Like they could be occupied?
Correct.
And the occupancy rate was 90%?
Correct.
And so what was the average duration of stay in a therapeutic living unit bed?
I don't have that information readily available, but generally it is at least 90 days, sometimes longer. For the female TLU, we have fewer days that people can apply for the program, up to 60 days as a start, as long as they're there for 60 days. So it could range from 90 days to a few more months, depending on the needs of the individual.
Can the ministry tell us what they mean then when a person has completed a program in a TLU?
The completion of the therapeutic living unit program is a very individual-based program, and so part of it is related to the needs of the individual, and it's a tailored program for their completion. So part of the program completion is when they've reached certain milestones within the program, and what that looks like for furtherance when they return to the community in terms of additional supports that may be required.
So the annual report shares that 54 individuals successfully completed in custody programming, but there's no consistency in what successfully completed means.
Successfully completed means that they have graduated from the program as participants within the program that's offered through our service provider.
But different time periods spent in the TLUs.
That is correct.
Please, if the ministry is able to submit the number in writing regarding the number of individuals that did go through a therapeutic living unit, that would be incredibly helpful to understand. Is it 54 people out of 1,000, or is it 54 people out of 10,000? I have no idea. So is the ministry able to provide that information to us in terms of the number of people that went through TLUs?
You want to know how many individual clients were in TLUs?
How many inmates started a time in the therapeutic living unit? If we have 54 that completed, how many started but didn't complete?
Perhaps it requires further explanation here, and we can provide that, because the TLUs are a client-centered program, or member-centered program, as the vernacular is used. And of course, those members can only participate insofar as they are still held in custody. So it may be that they started in the TLU, but their warrant expiry period came up in any event of their feeling as though they successfully embraced the program that was being provided to get through it.
Sure, what I would like to know is how many individuals started in the TLU? How many individuals were admitted to a TLU bed and did not complete? How many TLU individuals started in a TLU bed and did complete? We have the 54 inmates who completed. How many did not?
Okay.
Thank you. I look forward to having that in writing. The annual report references Bakarian Correctional Care as the contractor running TLUs. It's not formerly ROSC Solutions Group. Bakarian Correctional Care is a subsidiary of ROSC Solutions Group. How much did Bakarian Correctional Care receive in 24-25 to operate the therapeutic living units?
Fiona, is that a number that we have?
For the contract, that is facilitated through mental health and addictions. It is not something that the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services pays for.
So on page 30, how much was transferred from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction to the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services to operate TLUs?
I can look through the numbers specifically, but the funding that was transferred was for the opening of the living units, so that the correctional personnel who operate the living unit from a safety, security, milieu environment, it's the funding for that purpose.
On page 30 of the annual report, it says that in 24-25, the ministry received $3.43 million from mental health and addiction to support the operation of the TLUs and associated transitional services across Alberta. But now you're telling us that it's just the opening of the therapeutic living units?
No, what I'm saying is that money was transferred to facilitate the operation of the therapeutic living units as they operate within a correctional facility. And so it is the correctional staff that are on the living unit. The programming is delivered by Bakarian, but the unit operates as a correctional unit within a correctional facility that requires staffing personnel as part of it.
Bakarian Correctional Care's own number is that it estimates that 70% of inmates have some form of serious substance use or addiction issues. What is your ministry doing outside of the therapeutic living units? 72 beds is not a lot. We're talking about 20,000 inmates that were admitted into remand or correction at some point in 24-25. 7 out of 10 of those inmates have serious substance use or addiction issues. This is feeling like the dose is awfully small relative to the challenge. And Bakarian Correctional Care is getting $11 million to operate. Now, there's some discrepancy here in the language that is being used across government when it comes to the number of actual available units and spaces and beds under this program. But when we're talking about 20,000 inmates being admitted, adult inmates that are being admitted, and 70% of them have some form of substance use and addiction issues, what else is being done to support the treatment services and requirements within your correctional facilities?
Perhaps I'll start. That's an excellent question, and obviously a much larger cross-section of folks that come into custody than are able to be housed in or part of the TLU program. So you likely know that our health service provider in custody is Recovery Alberta. They have healthcare staff embedded in all of our facilities, everything from nurses.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We will now hear questions from the government members. You have 15 minutes. MLS here.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I recognize the hard work that you and all your staff are doing, and I will say that our frontline police men and women are a very honorable group of individuals that we need to respect. I understand also this is a difficult job to navigate, as we've heard from my NDP colleagues, that we're trying to find solutions and not just look at problems and hope they go away. Now, on page 17 of the 24-25 annual report, details how partnering with police services and municipalities is the key objective to combating social disorder and addressing crime. It is particularly relevant to outcome one: Albertans are safe and secure. In rural, we are definitely feeling the pressures when it comes to the crime, and I will say that while we're feeling it, I know that our largest cities are also feeling this level of crime. How is Alberta's government partnering with stakeholders in urban areas to combat crime in Edmonton and Calgary?
Thank you for the question. So again, in reference to page 17 of the annual report, perhaps I'll speak on the Safe Streets Action Plan, which was referenced in my introductory remarks. The Safe Streets Action Plan invests in 50 frontline members or police officers in the city of Calgary and the city of Edmonton, and those members' focus is to be in transit, core, and other high crime areas. The way that Edmonton has used this is to invest in their transit community safety team, or TRACS. Their focus is on proactive and reactive transit policing. It took some time to build up to meet the usage of 50. So in 24, the Edmonton Police Service were able to deploy 32 of the 50 funded officers, with remaining positions reliant on subsequent years to get up to that strength. They provide 7-day-a-week, 21-hour-a-day dedicated transit safety coverage. In Calgary, they've monikered their teams CERT and the High System User Program. So they launched 8 community engagement response teams across Calgary, or CERT teams, and all 50 officers were deployed. They've embedded high system user coordinators within each of those CERT teams, and have identified and actively managed 46 high system users in that 24-25 time period. They also established a dedicated collaboration with the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service, Urban Crime Initiative, Community Court, and recovery clinicians for these high users of service cohort.
So it sounds like we are working with almost all the departments and ministries that we possibly can to bring safety to Edmonton and Calgary, and that's commendable, sir. I will say that while I am in Edmonton, I do see that our streets are becoming more user friendly, if you will. Now, when it comes to fiscal responsibility, how does this initiative demonstrate that Alberta is investing wisely in public safety? So we've heard some concerns that money is always tight, and when it comes to an Albertan and a conservative Albertan, I want to make sure that our money is being well spent, sir. So can you walk us through how this money is being spent?
I'd suggest that the Calgary model is quite a good one. There's a disproportionate pressure on the justice system and other human services systems that a small cohort of folks end up interacting with the most. And so the goal was to insert the investment in people and resources into those areas that most acutely need it, in order to try and assist some of these folks who are heavily reliant to no longer have to interact as much with police or other systems. Really, the goal is less interaction, with more capacity for these folks to live independently without consistent interaction with the justice system.
Well, thank you again for that. And again, I know that a lot of times what happens is what impacts Edmonton and Calgary actually starts to move out to rural Alberta. And can you please tell the committee on how the province continues to advocate for cutting-edge police services in rural communities like my constituency, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul?
I'd suggest that the legislative changes which began in 24-25 relative to the Police Act is how Alberta is trying to respond to the needs in urban areas. In addition to the rapid teams, which I referenced again in my introductory remarks, where we're trying to make it so that sheriff peace officers can deploy with police officers in the event of exigent circumstances. The changes to the Police Act and the creation of the Independent Agency Police Service will be able to assist in more rural areas across the province. Folks have heard Minister Ellis talk about the IAPS's aim of augmenting and supporting police across the province to ensure that those who live in rural Alberta likewise receive public safety services as you would in an urban centre.
Well, thank you for that. I know that for myself, I've got a good relationship with my local RCMP detachments. I've got four detachments in my area, plus a district from the northeast up in St. Paul. And I deeply respect my members within the RCMP. Now, can you explain how the government of Alberta is supporting my RCMP and how much we've invested in our current provincial policing service?
Can, and again, in reference to the annual report, that's at page 20, which confirms in 24-25, the government provided $376.7 million pursuant to the Provincial Police Service Agreement, or the PPSA. And that's the contract as between Alberta and Canada to support those communities of less than 5,000 people across the province.
Well, thank you for that. And I know that that the province of Alberta is in good hands with yourself and the staff, as well as all of your partner agencies. I'd like to cede my time to MLA Roswell, if that's fine.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to work on outcome number one. The ministry is expected to support municipalities and Indigenous communities in exploring different avenues of policing that are reflective of their communities. So we all know that Grande Prairie is pursuing the establishment of the Grande Prairie Police Service, and I'd like to reference pages 23 and 24 of the annual report. So what supports has the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services given the Grande Prairie Police Service?
The number financially is $16.7 million in terms of assisting with their transition. But in addition to the financial support, I also am just going to ask ADM Zablocki to expand on his engagement with Grande Prairie and what we've done to assist in their building capacity in that city.
Thank you. If I could, through the Honourable Chair, in regard to provincial support for Grande Prairie, the Deputy Minister articulated the financial commitment that was made in the context of $16+ million to date. In addition to that, my program area has been supporting the Grande Prairie Police Service initiative in the context of ongoing ongoing check-ins, advice, guidance. We've built a strong relationship with the city, with the executive of the Grand Prairie Police Service as well. One of the requirements for the police service is to meet the provincial policing standards. Every police service in this province has to meet the standards that are set for policing in this province, including a new police service such as the Grand Prairie Police Service. And we've been working with them, moving them along, ensuring that they are going to be able to meet those standards. They have a targeted transition date of October 21st, 2026, to take command of policing within the city of Grand Prairie. Currently, command is still with the RCMP detachment and RCMP commander, in spite of the fact that Grand Prairie Police Service police officers are on the ground in certain numbers, assisting to police the city of Grand Prairie.
So then, like was earlier mentioned, there was $376 million that goes to supporting the RCMP in rural Alberta, essentially. We've mentioned 11.3 in the 24-25, and then to date 16.7. Is that on top of the 376? And like, is there kind of a chew off between we're spending here but we're saving here? Like, how does is there an additional cost to get that process going?
Yeah, it would be on top of the 376. And in Alberta, the RCMP can be here for, I say, two different reasons. One is pursuant to the Provincial Police Service Agreement, which is that $376 million figure. But then if you are a municipality of over 5,000, you get into a contract directly with Canada for a municipal police service agreement, and that's what Grand Prairie would be under. So these transition costs are separate and distinct from the PPSA number, and are working to help build out that strength and readiness for the Grand Prairie Police Service to take on the police of jurisdiction, as we call it, for the city.
Great. And you mentioned standards that they have to meet. I guess another word for that is milestones. Is there, do you want to expand on what milestones the Grand Prairie Police Services had to meet in order to, are they on track to getting this done?
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to start that and have ADM Zablocki supplement. They, I should say, have worked really hard, I think, at their recruitment because they needed to get members who are going to be ready to police the city. So as of now, they've expanded their total sworn membership to approximately 70 members, with plans to continue to take on that police of jurisdiction role, which is anticipated for the fall of this calendar year that we're in. They've also worked on operational integration with the RCMP, the idea being that there needs to be a time where they're codependent so that one of them doesn't just hand the keys over and say, here, you're the police service now. There's a lot of community work that needs to be done in order to ensure that it's a seamless transition in the day that Grand Prairie Police Service does become the police service of jurisdiction, that they are in fact ready, and the community is likewise ready to embrace them as their police service. One example of that is the Enhanced Community Engagement Unit, which was implemented like a community standards unit addressing social disorder, visible quality of life concerns, and it too is integrating. So those are some examples. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to touch on in that regard.
Yeah, I'll maybe just add, there'll be things like establishing proper communication systems, dispatch systems that will need to meet the provincial standards. It'll be examples like that. It's some of the day-to-day things that you think about when you think about your police service in your respective jurisdictions. So that work is, as the Deputy Minister indicated, is well underway, and we do anticipate the Grand Prairie Police Service meeting those standards. Perhaps the one area that they will need continued support in is in the context of the emergency response teams support. So it does take significant training, financial commitment to acquire and deploy emergency response teams, such as, I think in Edmonton and Calgary, they'll call them tactical teams or SWAT teams. The RCMP call them emergency response teams.
Thank you. We will now hear from the members of the official opposition. You have 10 minutes in this block. MLA Schmidt.
The Jasper wildfire response is discussed on pages 36 and 37 of the annual report. The review of the wildfire response conducted by the municipality of Jasper stated, quote, provincial involvement introduced complexity due to uncertain decision-making authority and jurisdictional overlap, which requires clarification for effective, efficient emergency planning and response. What work has the department done to clarify decision-making authority and jurisdictional overlap?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Schmidt. Through the chair, we'll go right over to Senior ADM, Steve Lacroix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would argue that the municipality of Jasper is probably one, if not the better trained emergency management organizations that we have in the province. Some of the jurisdictional challenges are inherent to having a municipality within a national park that sits within the province of Alberta. To facilitate the decision-making processes, understanding the varying legal opinions on the topic, we have embarked, actually way before that incident, but it continued throughout the incident, and it was exacerbated, of course, because that's what happens during an emergency, in a number of conversations with the superintendent responsible for the National Park of Jasper. Also, conversations with the CEO of Parks Canada on the very topic. And to your comment on the questions that were being asked by the government of Alberta, I would say, without sounding too flippant, that it is a fire that started in the national park, that encroached into a municipality, and that despite what you may have heard publicly related, the province has made available a disaster recovery program to the tune of $149 million, for which we can expect, at best, $50 to $60 million back from the federal government. So I think it's justified to ask certain questions when we're spending over close to $150 million of Albertan taxpayer money. Thank you.
What's the timeline for resolving this issue? The ADM just said that this was something that the department was aware of or working on addressing prior to the fire. When can we expect these jurisdictional overlap and clarity on decision-making authority to be resolved?
Mr. Chair, through you. We only control what we control. So Alberta has a position, and Ottawa and us are collaborating on an agreement, let's call it a memorandum of understanding, clarifying decision-making authorities as it pertains specifically to emergency management within the confines of that particular park. And I think it would be somewhat, I guess, if I want to be prudent, I want to make sure that we have similar agreements in place in Waterton, in Banff, Lake Louise, Jasper, and Wood Buffalo National Park. So it is a complex space. We have advanced a position from the Alberta Emergency Management perspective. We have collaborated with each of those municipalities within the confines of those parks, and are advancing conversations there with Parks Canada on that very front through our colleagues at Public Safety Canada.
So what, I mean, wildfire season is upon us now. It sounds like there isn't a memorandum of understanding in place with Parks Canada or the federal agencies involved. So what assurances can you give the people of Alberta that should a wildfire rip through Banff tomorrow, that we're not going to end up with the same decision-making questions and jurisdictional overlap now. Like, you know, I understand that you've put forward a position, like, let's resolve this so that people in those parks are protected this year.
Yeah, so what I would say to that, Mr. Chair, is we have extent agreements that are already in place. And we have engaged with each of those communities extensively on tabletop exercises and decision-making matrices that would support a position where maybe less friction is present, understanding who is responsible for what jurisdictionally, legally, within the confines of each of those parks.
So these extant agreements, were those in place prior to the 2024? Are we operating with those same agreements?
They are.
Okay, so we've already seen that they don't work. I asked what assurances you can provide people in provincial or federal parks to be protected, and you referred to an extant agreement that has already been demonstrated to fail the people of Jasper. So when can we expect a better agreement in place?
It's a good question for the CEO Parks Canada, but I would qualify your comment. I would flip it on its head, actually. You say it didn't work. I would say it saved 2/3 of Jasper.
I mean, I didn't write the report. That was the municipality of Jasper's words. So
Did it say it failed?
The same report states that working from existing legislation and authorities, that the municipality should meet with Parks Canada, appropriate government of Canada, and provincial Alberta representatives to discuss and resolve. Okay, sorry. I'm going to move on from that one. Alberta Emergency Management. I'm sorry, did the ADM have something to say?
No, exactly.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
All right.
Point of order. You know, every week, Chair, we just, I'll call this point of order under 23C. You know, it could be so many others. But there just seems to be, well, then I will. And actually, I'm speaking right now, if you don't mind. I don't want to be interrupted by your rudeness, and that is what I'd like
And
to
I'll let,
talk.
just through the chair's cite the provision, tell me what went wrong in
23J. Yes, we could go on and on here. So uses abusive or insulting language of a nature to create disorder. I mean, the team is here to answer questions, and they're doing that to the best of their ability. But every week, this member, honestly, you must see this, Chair.
Member, arguing question period is not an opportunity to take shots at your colleagues. Just tell me what was violated so I can hear the question, what was said that's offside, that you find repetitive, so we can move on.
That's offside. Needling, that this gentleman is trying to answer questions. He's here in a professional capacity. It's not necessary for the member to conduct himself like that.
I still don't understand, but membership.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with your assessments. I don't think the member hasn't clearly even explained what the point of order is. I was just trying to get some clarification from the Assistant Deputy Minister. Let's move on here and get to the questions.
Well, with respect to repetition, I think question was asked once. I didn't find it repetitive. And also, I didn't see any abuse of language. So I cannot rule this a point of order, but I would suggest that conversation should flow through the chair at all times.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, again, the same review conducted by the municipality highlighted the role that Alberta Emergency Management Agency has for ensuring responders have strong incident command system knowledge, but it found that variations in understanding, inconsistent application across agencies, and unclear role definitions led to coordination challenges, decision-making efficiencies, and tactical delays. The same review went on to state consistent ongoing training on ICS is key to building and maintaining capacity and capability across the province to help supporting agencies effectively support emergencies in other jurisdictions. Can the department tell the committee how the AMA has responded to this recommendation?
Let me go. Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. I guess what I would qualify that comment in that report as accurate. And when you have the number of varying organizations responding to the event, you can expect varying levels of competency without sounding too negative. And in this particular instance, right, overnight we deployed assets from 32 different fire departments overnight. And also augmented the incident command post in Jasper that moved to Hinton as the fire encroached the town. I may be a bit biased, but I would say that the province of Alberta leads the way actually in incident command system training in the country. Case in point, actually, we just came back from Manitoba training that province on incident command system. And we train thousands of people every year on the various courses available through that program. And we continue to do so. So we have a system that standardizes that training, that makes sure that people that are deployed on behalf of the province are in possession of those qualifications. What I can't guarantee you in all instances is when a municipality asks for support from another municipality without going through the province, that I can't vouch for the capabilities of those individuals. But the municipality is aware that they should seek those credentials that we provide. Thank you.
The same report states that the AEMA also holds a critical role in resource management and tracking as it mobilizes resources on behalf of municipalities during large incidents. What has the AEMA done to improve its resource management processes to support municipalities in these emergencies?
Yes, through the chair again. There's always room for improvement. I would say that our ability to manage and keep on top of the resources we have available is pretty good, but we did procure a new system to do just that.
Thank you. We will now move back to government members. And you have 10 minutes in this rotation, MLA Lovely.
Thank you. I'd like to pause for a moment and just say we've had a lot of activity in my community, and I want to express my gratitude to your team for the extra effort that you're putting forth to help make people in my community feel safe. So thank you so much for that. Albertans expect their policing services to not only be well-trained, but accountable to the people they spend each day living alongside and protecting. Referencing pages 22, 23 of the annual report, what has the Public Safety and Emergency Services done to ensure that police are accountable to the communities they serve? And yeah, let's just pause there.
Perhaps I'll focus on two things. One is the body-worn camera project. Body-worn camera is quite self-evident. It's a camera that police members will wear on their chest. And procurement work for this project did start in fiscal 24-25. Likewise, the in-car digital video system and digital evidence management portal. Each police service or each police agency will be responsible for developing and implementing personal impact assessment frameworks and procedures. Due to the nature of police work, there's going to be an intersection with privacy here, and naturally we're going to have to grapple with that tension exercise. And there are ongoing discussions right now on how the evidence and the evidence management will be addressed by policing and the intersection with the justice process, and how Crown prosecutors digest that evidence as they proceed towards the criminal trial process. Another thing is, in addition to body-worn, is relative to accountability, the Police Review Commission, which has largely taken shape more so this year, but that is the centralized intake and investigations agency for police complaints across the province, as opposed to it being dealt with by chiefs of police in their home agencies.
Thank you for that. I actually had a conversation with one of the officers in my community, and he showed me how the camera worked. And I asked him, do you think it worked well? And he was happy with how it worked. And, you know, I'm interested to see how all this plays out. But I think it's to the advantage of our officers to have that equipment available, just another set of eyes and something to go back and review different situations. And I think it provides a higher level of safety for them as well when they wear those cameras. So moving on now to Indigenous Policing Services. Key Objective 1.4 references supporting municipalities and Indigenous communities in exploring different models of policing. Indigenous communities continue to list public safety as a top priority. What work has your ministry done to support Indigenous policing and ensure that Indigenous public safety priorities are supported? How much has the province invested in support of Enoch and Siksika police initiatives? And also, if you could expand in 24-25, the ministry put forward several capital requests to provide capital grant funding to 3 First Nations police services. What were the scopes and estimated capital grant amounts, and how much funding did the province provide the 3 currently operating First Nations police services in 24-25?
Relative to the first part of the question, Mr. Chair, the work the ministry has done to support Indigenous policing includes the transition study grants, which were provided. I referenced those again in my introductory remarks. Those were grants provided to communities to study the feasibility of independent policing. That included both Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Or forgive me, it may have just been for Indigenous communities. I'll clarify that. We do continue to advocate with the federal government to recognize Indigenous policing as an essential service. You mentioned Siksika and Enoch. We provided Enoch with $146,500 to conduct one of these feasibility studies, for example, on independent or Indigenous policing for that nation. The Siksika funding envelope is approximately $784,000 in both 23-24 and fiscal 24-25 for pre-transition related activities. On the question about capital grants, you indicated that in fact we do have 3 First Nations police services in Alberta: Tsuut'ina, Blood, and Lakeshore. For Tsuut'ina, we invested in a new satellite police facility, so in addition to their main station, with an investment amount of $1.5 million. For Blood Tribe, we assisted in building a new police station to replace the old one, and that amount of money in total has been $5.5 million. And for the Lakeshore Regional Police Service, we've helped with an expansion to their existing building, and that has been a total of $6.8 million. So we have provided approximately $14 million in round numbers to help expand the physical plant of these 3 police services as they continue to provide policing for the nations that they are on.
Okay, thank you. The province provided funding to Indigenous communities across Alberta to conduct studies on their policing priorities and better understand the public safety landscape. How much money was delivered through these grants, and what did the studies indicate?
Thank you, and indeed it was for Indigenous communities and municipal. I note that we have provided approximately $1.27 million in fiscal 24-25 and north of $2 million over a 3-year period. And forgive me, was the second part of the question through the chair, what specifically was done?
How much money was delivered through these grants, and what did the studies indicate?
Okay, perhaps I'll ask ADM Zablocki to talk about some examples of what these studies had indicated.
Yeah, great. Through the chair, through the Honorable Chair. As mentioned, just north of $2.2 million was provided for grant applications involving 23 First Nations, all 8 Métis settlements in the province, and 35 municipalities. And again, this was a 3-year grant window. For the Indigenous communities, specifically, 15 grants were provided to study the establishment of a self-administered First Nations police service, not unlike the 3 that we currently have in the province, and Siksika was mentioned, and Enoch, who are both in transition to their own service as well. And similar to the Métis settlements as well, they are interested in a standalone police service for their police of jurisdiction. So 3 grants were provided to fund studies to enhance existing RCMP policing models via the introduction of community police officers as well. So in addition to the Indigenous interest from the Indigenous communities who want their own self-administered, there are other communities that wanted to look at enhancing their RCMP service delivery, also complemented by local peace officer programs in the context of community safety.
Thank you. I'd like to turn your attention to page 23 of the annual report, specifically on the Police Review Commission. I know that myself and Albertans are interested to hear about what this commission is and how it fits into the work towards Outcome 1, Key Objective 1.3, identifies accountability as an important aspect of meeting this outcome. And I know that page 23 of the annual report details the Police Review Commission. Can you just tell this committee and the Albertans listening what the PRC is and how it enhances accountability and transparency and why it was established?
Indeed, we can. Through the chair, the Police Review Commission is effectively a consolidation of patchwork, where if you had a complaint against a police officer in this province, it would go back to the home agency, and the complaint would be investigated by that agency, save for matters that reached a certain threshold, which would be given to the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. The Police Review Commission now behaves as the umbrella organization. Embedded within it is the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, and it is a civilian-led organization that will provide arm's-length investigative services for alleged police misconduct, or police misconduct as the case may be, and centralize it under one house we'll have main offices in Calgary and Edmonton, and the ability to be, as regional as the demand requires, to make sure that Albertans felt heard and that their matters regarding police conduct are addressed thoroughly.
Thank you. We will now move back to the official opposition for 10 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my questions are around the Independent Agency Police Service. So we know now that the ministry's plans are to transfer 200 peace officers into police officers over the next 3 years. Can the department tell the committee, are we just adding more responsibility to each of those peace officers who are transitioning to police officers? So in addition to highway patrol, they'll be doing other crime investigation and those kinds of things? Or are we taking them out of their positions and then leaving those positions vacant?
So, through the chair, the 200 is a number you referenced, sir. It is per year for 3 years, totaling 600. That would be the goal. So, of the sheriff complement right now, there are a certain number of functions that are undertaking they are operating in what we're calling police-like functions. So I think you mentioned, forgive me, through the chair, I think that it was mentioned about highway patrol. The goal would be for that member, that sheriff, to be able to continue to conduct the role that they're in while having the enhanced training and authorities and oversight. We just talked about, for example, the Police Review Commission and the world of police commissions or police boards, in order to be, I would say, woven into the fabric of public safety in a more robust way. So these folks are going to move from being peace officers, and I always say their proper noun is a sheriff, but pursuant to statute, they're peace officers, and they're going to be deployed as police officers, so they too can provide enhanced services in the communities that they patrol, if it's highways, for example.
And I appreciate the explanation, but what's still not clear to me, are we creating vacancies in the existing positions by transferring these by giving these existing peace officers police officer designation? So, are we creating a bunch of prisoner transfer vacancies because we're taking existing sheriffs who are responsible for prisoner transfer out of that job and putting them on patrol? Or give me some insight into the personnel effects of this transfer of designations.
Mr. Chair, one of the main tenets of this transfer is to avoid disruption of the services that are currently provided. So to answer that question, the goal is, no, not to create vacancies, but in fact to make sure that all of the functions that the sheriffs currently undertake are not, jeopardized by the transition at all.
Okay, so each peace officer who will now be designated as a police officer will essentially be taking on additional responsibility while maintaining their current roles. Is that a fair restatement of the department's position?
Perhaps I'll start, and Mr. Chair, and then ask to be supplemented by ADM Zablocki. I just want to draw a distinction between the incumbent who's in that position now and the role itself, because those two things may need to be separated, but for context, but perhaps ADM Zablocki can add.
Yeah, if I could, through the Honorable Chair. So initially, what we'll see in a transition are the sheriffs that are currently performing, the sheriffs that are peace officers that are currently performing police officer functions, like your example of the Sheriff's Highway Patrol. They will simply convert to police officers in their existing or current positions. Eventually, down the road, to your other example around court and prisoner security peace officers, there may be interest from those individuals to become police officers in certain areas, like Sheriff's Highway Patrol, or fugitive apprehension, or SCAN, which are some of the areas that will eventually be police functions. Police officers will serve in those areas. So yes, down the road, there will be likely a vacancy, hopefully a very temporary vacancy, while an individual moves from peace officer, court security, for example, to police officer, Sheriff Highway Patrol. If that interest is there, that position will be subsequently backfilled. That function those are core functions that are delivered through the sheriff's branch. They need to be maintained and will continue to exist into the future.
I appreciate the clarity on that point. Thank you. Has the ministry performed an analysis of the costs to set up and operate the IAPS compared to the costs of contracting the RCMP for the same work? And, further on that, what was the amount of money that was spent on setting up the IAPS in 24-25?
Through the chair, in 24-25, there was no dedicated funding for the IAPS. There has been one study that's been commissioned, which is publicly available. It was done several years ago. And at this moment, I cannot recall specifically who the author was, or who the consultant was. PwC. Right now, the amount of money that is being invested into it is that $200 million number, which was referenced earlier, and that includes the baseline number for the Alberta Sheriff's Branch as it existed in fiscal 25-26, the adjustments made for the mid-year collective agreement settlement and an envelope of funding that is going to assist in the peace to police officer transition.
What was the vacancy rate in the sheriff's office in 24, 25?
Might not have it, but it's currently around 14. It's relevant.
Yeah, I'm advised that it's currently around 14%. Yeah.
Do you know, how does that compare to the RCMP?
We have reports from the RCMP on vacancies.
16 to 17.
Yeah, the RCMP are reporting approximately 16 or 17% vacancy rates.
So can the department inform the committee on what it's doing to improve attraction and recruitment of Alberta sheriffs? It's a pretty high vacancy rate.
Yeah, in my time with the department, we have increased the recruiting capacity in the sheriffs by creating a rolling recruitment. It had previously been one where there were classes that were invited to apply, but rather than having discrete recruitment periods, there's now an opportunity for those who are interested to come directly to the department or through the web portal to make sure that they can express interest in application for the Alberta Sheriff's Branch.
And what impact has that had on recruitment? Have you seen a measurable decrease in the number of vacancies as a result of that change?
I don't have that information, and I wonder if it comes out of our annual report from 24-25.
And it's not clear to me when the recruitment changes were made. So if the deputy could clarify that for the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the ability for people to apply is a change that has been made through the web portal in the calendar year of 2025. I want to say towards the end of the calendar year of 25.
Okay, so,
The report in question.
all right. So, yeah, in 20 seconds, just, can the ministry explain what the overall impact on policing contracts with the RCMP will be with the creation of the independent police service?
It depends, Mr. Chair, on municipalities who wish to learn more about the provision of policing through the Alberta Sheriff's Police Service.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We'll move back to government members for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and along with my colleague from Camrose, I would like to thank you. I'm also a rural MLA, and the work you do is so important, especially in rural Alberta, and I just thank you all for being here and sharing with us today. I'd like to go back to the therapeutic living units, TLUs. Addiction and public safety are intertwined. And I know that many people who engage with the justice system suffer from addiction and mental health concerns, as we've said earlier today. So I'd like to hear how the therapeutic living units fit into this equation. Key Objective 2.2 says public safety and emergency services will implement therapeutic living units and supports in correctional facilities in alignment with and commitment to a recovery-oriented system of care. So first, referencing page 30 in the annual report, how do the TLUs work towards Objective 2.2?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the TLUs at a baseline are operating in 4 of our correctional facilities in Red Deer, Lethbridge, Fort Saskatchewan, and Calgary. I believe it was referenced earlier by ADM Lavoie that there is one female unit, that's the one at the Fort Saskatchewan Correctional Centre. The TLU program provides a structured, recovery-focused environment inside of a correctional center for individuals with significant substance use and mental health needs. It offers an evidence-based addiction treatment, mental health support, and cultural programming delivered over that minimum approximate 60 to 90 day in custody stay. Participants complete 3 phases of programming in the TLUs and receive a handoff to community supports like treatment facilities or recovery housing or family, helping to ideally break the cycle of addiction-driven reoffending. Although those who are in custody on remand, we don't have as clear a sight on when they may be released from custody, the program is offered to both sentenced and remanded clients of Correctional Services Division. As indicated earlier, the program is delivered by Becarian Health, the partner provider of services, and Correctional Services Division oversees the units themselves. And insofar as I may, anecdotally, we continue to hear about the really remarkable work of our correctional services staff who work alongside the Becarian staff, who are on those units because they really feel a desire to help with some of these inmates who have chronic or dependent substance use concerns. I believe that answers the question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that answer. And I'll put these next two together. First, what are the recidivism rates for TLU participants? And then, as Albertans expect their correction systems to think about the future and prioritize recovery, as stated earlier in Objective 2.2, what is the government doing to ensure that a continuity of care is maintained for participants who leave the program? I think you touched on that briefly. Maybe you could expand on that answer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. As of March 31 this year, 139 participants completed the full 90-day program within the TLUs. A comprehensive evaluation of, amongst other things, including recidivism, is underway by the Center of Recovery Excellence, or CORE. The study is going to examine key outcomes such as criminal thinking and behavior, relapse indicators, and longer-term outcomes, including recidivism, as indicated. The evaluation work is intended to generate evidence on program effectiveness as the program matures to inform future policy and program decisions. In the interim, the TL user monitoring focuses on proximal indicators of progress, such as engagement in programming, stabilization, and institutional conduct. And I can tell you that that measure is exceedingly positive. From qualitative discussions with those members in the TLUs, myself, across this province, the feedback is remarkable and inspirational. Relative to Objective 2.2, what's the government doing to ensure that continuity of care is maintained? The Government of Alberta, through Correctional Services Division, led by ADM Fiona Lavoie, supports continuity of care for individuals exiting the TLU through structured and evidence-based case management focused on reintegration. Correctional service workers who work in our facilities use an individualized approach to case management, regularly reviewing needs, and where possible, include families and community organizations and service providers to ensure a smooth transition. We've recently undertaken an effective case management initiative, and a pilot is underway to identify immediate and ongoing needs early for those who come into custody, allowing release planning to begin promptly. So, in a nutshell, from the moment that someone comes into custody, the focus of Correctional Services Division is to meet that person where they're at and provide casework and case planning so that they are not only successful in custody, but also once they go to the community, so that our community corrections branch, for however long that order goes for, and other community supports can provide this person with all of the faculties necessary for success.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that answer. I'm going to go to combating human trafficking. specifically the grant program. Objective 1.2 states that your ministry must continue to work with public safety stakeholders to address serious and organized crime by implementing risk reduction strategies, like increased border support to keep crime out of Alberta. This includes work to establish the Alberta Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons, as referenced earlier, and focused work on rural crime, hate-motivated crime, firearms violence, drug and human trafficking, and proceeds of crime. So I'd like to focus on human trafficking, as human trafficking and traffickers remain a scourge on Alberta. It particularly targets Indigenous communities, and referencing pages 20 to 21 of the annual report. Through you, Mr. Chair, could you please tell this committee what support your department has given to human trafficking and Indigenous groups and communities? And how was this funding distributed across the province?
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, I'll invite Assistant Deputy Minister Ross Nairn to assist with this one, if I may.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Thanks so much for the question. I've been a public servant for 18 years, and if there's one thing that I take a lot of pride in, it's the work that a lot of men and women do within my team and in the broader public safety space to combat human trafficking. We have supported the government in their efforts to conduct the Alberta Human Trafficking Task Force, led by Mr. Paul Brandt, who brought forward a report called the Reading Stone that laid out a list of actions by the government, recommendations to the government to combat human trafficking. One of these was to provide funding to the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking in Persons. And so when the government accepted that report in 2023, a lot of work with support from my area occurred in 2024, and it launched in March 2025 with a grant of $2 million to help support the establishment of the Alberta Centre to End Trafficking in Persons. We also launched a number of grant programs, in particular the Combating Trafficking in Persons grant program that was launched in 24-25 that allocated $5.5 million of funding that was provided to a number of different organizations. In terms of funding to Indigenous groups and communities, of that $5.5 million in CTIP funding, almost $500,000 was awarded to Indigenous nations, Chiniki First Nation, Goodstoney First Nation, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation, as well as $650,000 was awarded to Indigenous organizations such as the Alberta Native Friendship Centre Association, the Kainai Transition Centre Society, and the Métis Nations of Alberta. And this funding, I think, is a really big success, is that it was not just located in our urban centres. It was distributed to the Indigenous communities, as I mentioned, but it was also provided across the province. And so,
Thank you, ADM. We'll move back to the official opposition for 10 minutes, and I'll let her know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you look at page 60, the very end of the report, the ministry, the annual report talks about the total number of incidents of OC spray, that's capsaicin, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. The pepper spray, I'm assuming, is the correct term. So the deployment at provincial young offenders units, and the ministry goes on to say it's only used when all lesser uses of force options are exhausted and to reduce the likelihood of injury or harm for the young person and the staff involved. So I note that the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate recommended that the ministry monitor and publicly report the use of this spray in young offender centers in September of 2019. So I could not find any information until 23-24, where I noted 18 incidents. And now in this fiscal reporting period, we're at 25 incidents of OC spray use occurring within provincial young offender centers. So that is a significant increase in 1 year. And I'm just wondering if the ministry could, there wasn't any commentary in the report to talk about why, possibly what were the variables or what was being done to address this trend. And maybe if the ministry could speak to why the lack of data until very recently. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll invite Assistant Deputy Minister Fiona Lavoie in charge of Correctional Services Division.
Thank you. Fiona Lavoie, Assistant Deputy Minister, Correctional Services. So I can say generally that I can't provide the full historical reference in terms of the timelines for reporting, but what I can say is through and following the recommendations of the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate, work has been initiated to ensure continual reporting related to incidents that occur with youth in custody. So following the last few years, yes, there was an increase over in 24-25 in relation to the use of OC spray. Following each and every incident that occurs, we have developed a reporting mechanism to advise the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate of the incidents that occur, not just on an annual basis, but as they occur in the moment, and provide details in terms of the circumstances that arose. And so we do that as part of regular reporting. So while there's been an increase in the number of incidents, that can also be reflective of the number of youth that are in custody during those periods of time, as well as the type of circumstances.
You mentioned that you actually have been reporting to the OCYA as it occurs, which is great. How long, when did that start?
The exact year I cannot recall.
Just approximately.
Over the last few years.
The last, so like 2023?
23, 24, 24, 25, yeah.
Okay, so that would sort of align with the public reporting of the incidents then. So just out of curiosity, is there a reason why the ministry was unable to share this information after the OCYA recommendation in 2019? No?
I cannot speak to that, unfortunately.
Okay, it'd be great next year if we could see in the annual report maybe some information or some commentary about, what's been done to bring this number down. Anyway, moving on. So Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services plays a central regulatory and oversight role of security guard training. So I'm assuming that's the Alberta Basic Security Training, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's a 40-hour online course that's mandatory for licensing. More and more security guards are being used to patrol areas law enforcement used to, and they're responding to more violent and complex incidents with weapons, overdoses, all kinds of things. We've heard from that industry that the training is insufficient, in need of updating. We also heard that the update or the review was completed. Then we heard from the sector that they were not included in that review. So we do know, just based on their information, that security guards are being harmed and even killed at an alarming rate. So I'm wondering if the ministry could share with the committee what that review looked at, and how is the ministry sort of undertaking some of the concerns from that sector, the security guard sector.
Thank you, Chair. I would comment that the review has not been completed to date. It's due June, is my most recent update on the review, and will include a look at a review of training, oversight, the role that the ministry plays in the context of security guards in this province, and in regard to consultation, there's been extensive consultation with the industry. There were surveys sent out, there were town halls set up, there were one-on-one engagements with stakeholders through the industry as well.
Are you able to share with the committee maybe more details of that community consultation? Some of the feedback we'd heard from the sector, from the larger providers, the large businesses, let us know that they weren't involved in that review, so that would be great if we could share that information with them.
Yeah, absolutely, and we have shared with them as well. They've been invited. There were over 1,000 invitations submitted or delivered to stakeholders in the industry, and again, significant engagement.
I know you can't tell me because the review's still underway, but one of the serious concerns that was raised was the fact that the training, the 40-hour training, which was once maybe in person, real life, is now online. And so there was a lot of concern from these companies saying that people were showing up with license but were wholly unprepared for the very complex situations they were running into. So I'm wondering if you could talk about, are those concerns things that the department's aware of about the online training for security guards?
Yeah, absolutely. That was information that was received through the consultations. And without getting into specifics, that and those similar related issues will be addressed in the forthcoming days and months.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I'm going to move on to some of the information on page 20 around the hate crime coordination unit, I think it's called. So there's 2 hate crime community liaisons appointed in May of 22 to complete their work, which led to a series of recommendations submitted to government following broad engagement with stakeholders across the sector. Government is reviewing recommendations which will inform future government initiatives to address hate crimes in Alberta. So where can we find these recommendations? I wasn't able to find them.
Yeah, I can, through the chair, I can provide some commentary in that context. In regard to hate crimes, there were 3 different reviews that were undertaken over the last, I'll say, 3 to 4 years. Those reviews and their recommendations were consolidated into one report through our ministry, more specifically. And that report is intended to supplement or augment the broader Government of Alberta approach under the Gender-Based Violence Action Plan. So that work is currently underway. That integration is currently underway, and I don't know if my colleague ADM Nairn has anything further to add to that.
So in the annual report on page 20, it says, government is reviewing the recommendations which will inform future government initiatives to address hate crimes in Alberta. And so I'm specifically looking at the funding for this program that you're talking about in the annual report. Certainly I understand hate crimes would impact lots of areas, gender-based violence, certainly one of them. But I guess I'm looking for, is there a place that Albertans can go to see what are the recommendations specifically around hate crimes and what are we doing to address this very real problem that is growing?
I don't believe that is public information to this point.
So it just won't
of
be
course,
public ever?
No, I anticipate it will be. That work will be transparent.
So that was done in 2022 and it's 2026.
Go ahead, Russ.
The hate crime community liaison were appointed in 2022. That was a 2-year project, so it was completed in 2024. They submitted their report, and then it kind of goes into what Curtis talked about in terms of bringing these reports together. To ADM Curtis Zablocki's point, the strategy to end gender-based violence did come out in 2025. So, as the government addresses concerns of society, we have to address those as well.
Real quick, we're gonna run out of time. Does this ministry collect any information to determine if anti-immigrant rhetoric influences escalating incidents of hate crime? I'm just wondering, is there any kind of measure at all? I mean, we certainly get anecdotal stories. We see examples of this in our daily lives, but I'm wondering is the department looking at this?
Thank you. We will now move back to government members for 10 minutes of question. MLA Van Dyke.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the Deputy Minister and his team for being here this morning.
MLA Van Dyken. Deputy Chair is here for a while. If we let him introduce, that'd be great.
Well, good morning, everyone. Brandon Lunty, MLA for Leduc-Beaumont.
Now floor is yours, MLA.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you to the Deputy Minister and his team for being here this morning. I'm going to focus my questions on, in the highlights at the beginning of the report, it talks about improved emergency management measures, and that the ministry had allocated nearly $158 million in disaster recovery funding for wildfire and flood relief efforts. And I note in your opening comments that your focus is on 3 areas, focusing on collaboration, innovation, and resilience. Outcome number 3 on page 34 of the report reads that Alberta is prepared and resilient to the impacts of disasters. Albertans expect their disaster response framework to identify and support municipalities and communities throughout all stages of emergencies and disasters. Detailing key objective 3.1, to support Albertans and communities, to raise their awareness of disaster risk and preventative action. What work is underway in public safety and emergency services to assess and mitigate the impacts of large-scale disasters?
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll invite Senior Assistant Deputy Minister Steve Lacroix.
Thank you, Emily Van Dyken. Through the chair. As it was alluded to by the Office of the Auditor General earlier, we have embarked, based on a 2020 recommendation, on a fairly substantial piece of work referred to as the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment tool. I would say that process is mainly aimed at what I would qualify cost avoidance, maybe more than savings to our base programs. It is focused on providing evidence-based decision-making to our government, to municipal governments, to industry, to individuals. It is right in the middle of implementation as we speak, but for the purposes of the report, we have the framework and the approach that has already been approved. Training is not only underway, but actually quite advanced, and it's progressing across the province, and maybe out of scope a little bit, but I'll give you a glimpse of what's going on there currently. Is we've already conducted events with various municipalities across the province, and put them through, and put themselves through really, an analysis of their wildfire and flood risk in each of those municipalities, which would enable those municipalities to make, again, those decisions and those bylaws as it promotes resiliency and avoids exorbitant amounts of money being spent in their municipalities and in our province.
Thank you, Chair, and to the Deputy Minister. I'm just seeking a little bit of clarity on the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment Program. Like in the highlights in the report, it talks about that engaged nearly 19,300 participants in emergency management training sessions and supported approximately 2,400 learners through the new emergency social services training to help build resistance. And I guess my question for clarity is that separate from HIRA, the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment Program? Or like, it sounded to me like in the answer that HIRA is currently being implemented. How does that crossover show up?
Yeah, through the chair. A bit of both is the answer, and sorry if I'm not being absolutely clear, but I'll try. I'll take a stab at it. So the number, the 19,000 that you mentioned, includes a large proportion of trainees on the HIRA mapping tool and the tool itself. The second part of your question related to emergency social services, again, maybe a bit out of scope here as to the timing of what I'm about to tell you, but of course we've trained a large amount of local authorities to be able to receive evacuees from across the province, and as you would know, from other provinces or territories, as we've experienced in the very recent past, but probably in larger numbers in 2023 from the Northwest Territories. And in September, we've provided all those local authorities, following an extensive engagement with local authorities, with the nonprofit sector as well, and others, a bit of a framework that sets the baselines expected to be provided to evacuees, and facilitating the conversations between communities that, let's say, evacuate more often than others, and the hubs of evacuee reception centers that we have in the province, We're rolling out, well, actually, we've already rolled out a new registration tool to facilitate financial supports to those evacuees, and applied a large amount of effort to having, let's call it, culturally appropriate programs as we deal with First Nation evacuees and our Métis settlements and others within the province.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And, Objective 3.2 further emphasizes recovery of communities impacted by natural disasters. Every Albertan remembers the Jasper fire that touched the people of Jasper. Referencing pages 36 to 38, can you tell the committee how the Alberta Emergency Management Association is supporting Jasper's recovery and how much was paid out in disaster financial assistance for the 2024 events? And looking at page 39, I am interested if you could explain to the committee exactly what work has been done with our federal counterparts to assist in Jasper's recovery, and what is the expected reimbursement from the federal government for the 2024-25 program to help facilitate the recovery. In addition, how many private sector disaster recovery program applicants appealed decisions made on their files?
Thank you, through the chair. So I'll step on the toes a little bit of our colleagues at Municipal Affairs, because they are leading the Jasper Recovery Task Force. But that being said, our recovery branch does a lot of the heavy lifting and is an integral part of that particular task force. So, you know, beyond the work that we're doing financially, there's a number of other initiatives at play as well, from social supports, economic recovery, interim housing, property management, redevelopment, over which I alluded to earlier on. Parks Canada actually has as the hammer, so to speak. That being said, as I mentioned earlier to the member opposite, we stood up a disaster recovery program to the tune of $149 million. For the purposes of the annual report, I think we had spent $36.6 million, I believe, and we're north of $41 million as we speak today, to be transparent. 41.9 is the actual number. In terms of what can we expect, well, the model has changed recently in Ottawa, but if we keep this in the box that speaks to the disaster financial assistance arrangements available to provinces and territories in 24-25, it is a sliding scale that goes up to 90% reimbursement from the federal government. But looking at this particular program, the sliding scales, the first $18 million being ineligible for any federal reimbursement, the next tranche at 50, 75, and up to 90, out of $149 million, which I don't think we'll spend, to be perfectly honest, as we built in a lot of contingency to deal with what we don't know. We can expect a maximum of $59.9 million from the federal government. And I believe the last part of your questions was how many people have appealed, how many private applicants have appealed? Eight is the number.
Thank you for that, and I see we have 10 seconds left, so I will cede my time.
And thank you, Member Van Dyken. For this final rotation, member will read questions into the record for a written response, and each caucus will have 3 minutes, starting with official opposition. Emalila, no.
Thank you. So first question, does the ministry collect any race-based data from law enforcement to inform future investments? Number two, does the ministry collect any information to determine if anti-immigrant rhetoric influences escalating incidents of hate crimes? Third question. I note on page 27, the ministry references border patrol teams as a strategy to keep Albertans safe. How much does the ministry invest totally in border security annually? How many FTEs are assigned to border security? Any stats regarding crimes prevented or charges laid? And then overall satisfaction with the investment. My next question, can the department describe the social drivers of property crimes which continue to occur at alarming rates? And does the department do any cross-ministry work to identify and address those drivers? And my last question, is the ministry targeting any specific investments in crime hotspots around the province? Any programs and/or grants targeted at locations where specific severe crimes occur, listing the amounts and targets? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. Please clarify that the ADM referenced 72 therapeutic living beds across 4 units located in 4 correctional and remand facilities. And further, does the ministry have an estimate for or a target for the number of inmates to go through therapeutic living units in a 12-month period?
That's it. Government side.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to read a couple questions in through you, of course. So under outcome 1 of page 20, it states that the public safety and emergency services must continue work with stakeholders to implement risk reduction strategies and hate-motivated crime. So what has public safety and emergency services done to ensure that hate crimes are combated? Additionally, through the chair, I'd like, how does ASIP funding reduce the risk or impact of hate or bias-motivated incidents? And can the ministry provide examples of measurable outcomes achieved? I'd also like to ask a question on Alberta Crime, the Alberta Crime Prevention Grant. So this is referencing page 17 to 22 of the annual report. Can the department outline the types of initiatives that the Alberta Crime Prevention Grant supported and how it aligns with key objective 1.2 on implementing risk reduction strategies? And final question through the chair is, can the department please describe how these grants improve public safety of Alberta communities? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. I would like to thank officials from the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services and the Office of the Auditor General for their participation in responding to committee members' questions. We ask that any outstanding question be responded to in writing within 30 days and forwarded to the committee clerk. And you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting if you wish, but we will now be moving on to other business. And the Deputy Chair and I will convene a subcommittee meeting on committee's business this morning to recommend a schedule of ministries for the committees to meet with during the fall session, fall sitting for the committee's review at our next meetings. So are there any other items for discussion today? So the committee's next meeting will be on May 5th, 2026 with the Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas. And at this point, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Would a member move that April 21st, 2026 meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts be adjourned? So moved by MLA Sierra. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The meeting is now adjourned.